Okay.
Trying to run this organization. Work for talking accident.
Yeah. You'll get you.
I have somehow got a lot of.
Yeah.
So,
And they said you're $1 million.
We are or not, no. I know you don't want all 12 of these.
Friendship opportunity. Actually, your firm might benefit from it.
Gonna make you do better.
Yeah, third year.
Somebody's in the chat though.
Yeah, I am before, but I'm. Yeah, I did. You talk about maybe sleep. How are you? Okay.
Been walking your pocket.
Come in and sit down, join us in here, get a drink for beverage and snacks. It's really delicious. Are you recording?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can say whatever. I started the chat inside, so.
All right, well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us online and also here in person. For those that don't know, my name is Ian Vaughn. I'm the current president of the Virginia chapter for the National Organization of Minority Architects, also known as VANOMA. And one of our big initiatives is our Spotlight series. Traditionally, this is a virtual event, but it's also in person when we have the ability. So we're very thankful to be here today at VMDO's office. They are one of our sponsors. And today's speaker is actually one of their talented designers. In just a few moments, we will hear from her. But I'm going to turn over the floor to our other board member, Kim Smith, and also a principal here at VMDO. So thank you again for coming out, you all, and looking forward to a good conversation dialogue.
So this is really a great opportunity for VMDO to showcase our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's really in partnership with Central Virginia AIA that VANOMA comes together to have this presentation to feature talent in our office. And it's really important for us as designers to be able to empathize and understand our clients who are all very different than we are. It's really important that we as employees and coworkers understand what it means to be fully human and present as a designer here in the office. We all bring a different voice. We all bring a different background in history to the design decisions that we make. And we can make great designs when we hear all of the voices, the strong voices from all of the talent that we have here in the office. So I'm really excited to have Mira share with us what it means to be an architect, a woman architect and a Muslim architect, and practicing in the Western culture. So yeah.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Kim, and thank you all for being here today. I really appreciate it, and we're honored to have you here at VMDO. So yeah, my name is Mira Abdalla. I'm a designer at VMDO Architects, and this is my NOMA Spotlight. Thank you so much for NOMA and to AIACB for putting this together, and to VMDO for hosting. Oh.
Keyboard.
Yeah, click.
Yeah.
Maybe you
Click
click
onto
onto
the
PowerPoint. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Sorry about that. Assalamu alaikum, or peace be upon you. This is how we greet each other in the Islamic faith. While we may not typically extend our hand in greeting, especially from one gender to the other, to opposite genders, I want you to know that we are always spreading our peace towards you, and we respect you dearly. And so yeah, peace be upon all of you. And again, thank you for joining us today. So a little bit of my geographical background. I'm originally from Alexandria, Egypt. My family is from there, and then my parents moved to Florida, where I was born and raised in Tampa, Florida. And then in the past year, I've moved up to Charlottesville, Virginia, the beautiful city we're in right now. And I really loved the beautiful scenery here and all the seasons, something we didn't have down in Florida. So really enjoying my time here and a bit of my background. So growing up in Tampa, Florida, I had, the opportunity to see many beautiful places growing up, such as the downtown Tampa River Walk, where I'd spend many of my weekends. The beautiful architecture, coastal architecture in St. Petersburg, such as the Pink Don Cesar, the Pink Palace. And then, of course, you have to give appreciation to the occasional backyard alligator, which I always loved having as a morning visitor, in our home, something I miss. And then growing up, I spent a lot of time traveling back and forth between my home in Tampa, Florida, and my home away from home in Alexandria, Egypt, where my entire extended family lives, aside from my immediate family. And so, you know, growing up, I've had the opportunity to see many beautiful places and historic works of architecture, such as the Montezza in Alexandria, the pyramids of Giza, and then some more new renovated works, such as the Library of Alexandria, which has been renovated and kind of redesigned by Noah. And then some of the people and things that mean a lot to me are on the slide, just some, a lot more. But first, of course, my family is on the top left. That is my dad, my mom, and my younger brother. And then, of course, the mosque community here, the Islamic community, has been a really big part of my life, kind of my family away from home. One of my friends from the mosque is joining me here today. And I'm really grateful to have that community here in Virginia. And then some of the things I like to do, I really like to make calligraphy art, and I like to longboard when the weather's nice. And then just, some of my extracurriculars and things I do at work, which we'll dive a little more into. So to begin, I'd like to take you all on my journey to architecture. My journey to architecture began at a pretty early age, when I was 14 years old, starting high school at the Tampa Bay Technical School architectural drafting program. And so this was in 2014. And then this program gave me the opportunity to learn so much about architecture and various trades related to it from an early age. And then during my time in high school, I also had the opportunity to participate in the ACE mentorship program, where I learned about construction and engineering and how interdisciplinary this field really is. And then through the ACE mentorship program, I actually had my first internship through my mentor. And so I'm really grateful for that opportunity. And then with that, I started at the University of Florida with my Bachelor of Design and Architecture in 2018. And, took many different courses and many different things that really influenced the way that I think. And then graduated in May of 2022, and then came to work at VMDO Architects, where I've been happily working ever since. And since then, I've joined the AI Virginia Emerging Leaders in Architecture. And then stay tuned to find out a little more about what ESMA means to me. And so this, starting out again, my journey began in high school, really. And so being in an architectural drafting program was a really unique experience, where I got to do a bunch of fun architectural things, like build the Burj Khalifa out of little paper cubes. And we also started one of the nation's first AIS, or American Institute of Architecture students, chapters in the nation for high schools. And then I also had the opportunity to be in the ACE mentorship program, which if you guys haven't heard of it, it's a really great program which teaches high schoolers about architecture, construction, and engineering. I'm sure there may be people who are a part of it or grew up in this, but it was a really great program in that it taught me, again, how interdisciplinary architecture is. And I had the opportunity to work with a group to design a project from start to finish, including architecture, construction, and engineering. And then, of course, the mentorships that I've gotten through that have lasted a lifetime. And then a class that was really influential to me in my time in high school was my APR history class, actually. And it's not just because I somehow managed to convince everyone that our class shirt should be my favorite color, but also, or mainly because in this course, we had, every different chapter was about a different civilization. And in those chapters, we'd have a few works of art and then a few works of architecture. And all those works combined were supposed to give us a holistic understanding of that culture and how they inhabited the world and how they viewed things. And it was just such a beautiful thing to me to be able to tell the story of a people through their place. And so that's when I decided, this is what I want to do for a living. I want to tell people's stories through architecture. And with that in mind, I went into architecture school. Oops. And in architecture school, of course, we got to dive really deep into the idea of storytelling. So much of architecture school is about taking narrative drivers and then studying them deeply and figuring out how you could take them and analyze them and turn them into a graphical understanding or depiction of them. So this was a study of the Russian Revolution and texts that came out of it, such as State and Revolution, and then taking a narrative driver like that and learning to understand it and how it can translate into a graphical depiction and then ultimately into a spatial experience was a really transformative experience for me, which I think is a really beautiful thing about architecture and something that sticks with me to this day, and really excites me about this profession. And then from that, I went on to learn that, you know, a story isn't just about people. There's also a story of place. Every place has its own story. For example, one of my projects in school was about Lake Eola, a lake in Orlando, Florida that began as a sinkhole and then turned into a hub for a thriving metropolitan center of Orlando, Florida. And so because Florida's landscape is, you know, it has a thriving aquifer system underneath it, and the landscape is made of limestone. So every now and then we get these big, scary sinkholes. But you know, while it is a scary thing, it's also a very beautiful thing in the way that it transforms the landscape. And, you know, in some cases, such as Lake Eola, it can turn into a lake, which then draws life to it. And I thought that was a really beautiful story. And so in this project, I became really interested in exploring this idea of the Floridan aquifer and celebrating that mysterious landscape we have underneath us in Florida, and trying to study how you could turn this idea of the Floridan aquifer into an architectural partie diagram. And so with that, we landed on a sort of mass carved out in very intentional ways to allow in light and to emphasize different experiences of water, which would take you away from the chaos of the city and allow you to just reflect on where you're at and the story of the place where you are. And so then I went on to take this course called Places and Spaces. And this course, I have to mention, it was just so influential in the way that I view architecture in the world, because in this course, my professor would take us to all these different spaces that he deemed to be sacred space in some way. And we would just sit there silently for a decent amount of time, and we would just reflect on how the space made us feel. And that was really important because it was the first time that I think I really shifted from seeing architecture as what you're seeing visually to, you know, seeing that dimension of architecture as how a space feels as well. And that's a really important part of it. And so with that, I went into my senior thesis, which was very inspired by this and focused on the idea of designing for feeling. And so this project was a partner project, and something that my partner and I did was we explored these different emotions and what it looked like for each of us in a graphical way. So the top line is my paintings, and then the bottom is my partner's. And we thought it was just very interesting how it revealed how subjective feelings are. If you try to depict them in a graphic way, it's really difficult to, you know, settle on something that everyone agrees upon. And if this is the case for, you know, a 2D painting, then of course this is the case for any spatial experience as well. All the spaces we design are experienced differently by anyone who inhabits it. And so as we went into designing and trying to figure out how to turn these ideas into spatial realities, of course, it proved to be a challenge given, again, the subjectivity of feeling and emotion. And we landed on designing these strong phenomenological experiences, which would allow you to really take pause and separate from, you know, the chaos of your everyday and be present with your emotions, regardless of, you know, which emotion is evoked in a certain space. really just taking pause to give light to those emotions which may otherwise be cast aside. And so, given this was architecture school, we needed to figure out a way to turn this into architecture. And this was based in New York City. And the idea of this was to design a museum of emotions, which would allow people to move from one emotion to another and experience different emotions in a spatial way. And the program for this project had to also include a hotel and apartment. And something really important was that the museum, we didn't want it to just be separated in its own thing. We wanted it to weave into these other spaces because, just like emotions, you can't experience emotions siloed. They're always a part of your everyday. You never know when they're coming. And so having these spaces of pause weaved into your everyday was a really important part of this. And so this was the design we ended up with two strong rectilinear masses being woven through by these various museum of emotion spaces, which are supposed to represent different feelings. And then, of course, opening up to the city was also a really important part in order to give not just spaces for reflection inside, but also on the outside of the building. And then finally, my final semester in school, I was really honored to be able to do a study abroad program to Vicenza, Italy, where I was able to learn so much about this rich historic culture in Italy that is so different from mine, but also in many ways very similar and has just as deep roots. So it was a really exciting experience to immerse myself into this. And in the semester, I got to experience not only Italy, but many different parts of Europe, and see the way that they told their stories through very different types of architecture. And I think that was, a really beautiful way to come back to my initial experience of learning about architecture as storytelling and getting to experience that in the real world and be a part of those stories. And so after spending so much time learning about all these different narratives and experiencing all these different stories and cultures, I came back, after graduating and kind of was asking myself, what is my story? What is my history, my identity? And I think it was really, really important for me to discover that, because sometimes growing up in America, it's easy for, as a minority, it's easy for you to cast aside that second, the other part of your identity that's not the American part. And just separate it. But bringing that all together is really important to me. And this was kind of my digging in and learning more about my culture and also my religion and how I could integrate that more into my work. And so there's this beautiful quote by Dr. Odunafe from UVA, where he says, if asked to introduce Islam to an audience unfamiliar with the religion or the civilization, that essentially he would show them a beautiful work of Islamic art or take them to one of the famous works of Islamic architecture and allow them to just, sit there in silence and marvel at it and experience the space. And I think this is, this really says a lot, because Islamic architecture is a physical embodiment of the essence of the religion of Islam. Islamic architecture is a vessel through which we understand God and ourselves as Muslims. There's this idea of ihsan, or excellence, in our religion of Islam, which is to worship God as if we see him, because although we can't see him, we believe that he can always see us. And so Islamic art and architecture acts as a reflection of God's beauty into the physical realm, helping us to achieve that ihsan and to be able to, experience that in a spatial way. And so, every culture has its worldview of, how you view the human being. And it's important when talking about Islamic architecture to also talk about Islamic psychology. And Islamic psychology has, comprises of three parts. The nafs, which is the psychological self, the body, which is your biological self, including the heart and the mind, and then the ruh, or the soul, which is your spiritual self or your highest state. And in Islam, we believe that your soul experienced the direct presence of God before being placed into your body. And therefore, we believe we were created in an innate purity. And the more in touch that you are with your soul, the closer you are to that innate purity in which you were created. And so we have many practices in our everyday lives that help us achieve this excellence and to be more in touch with our soul, such as the 5 daily prayers. You may or may not have heard, but Muslims are required to pray 5 times a day at designated times, early in the morning, at noon, afternoon, evening, and night. And before every prayer, we have this ritual cleansing called wudu. It's essentially, it's an ablution that is both supposed to be a physical cleansing, but also a spiritual cleansing. So, you know, again, purifying not just your body, but also your soul. And of course, this has architectural implications as well. So as a Muslim living in America, it's been really exciting for me to see some of the ways that different spaces have worked to accommodate Muslims, such as the picture on the left is actually from the University of Miami, where they've designed wudu rooms where Muslims could go to perform this spiritual cleansing before praying. And then also seeing different universities and other public spaces have meditation rooms or prayer spaces is always a really welcoming feeling to us Muslims, because it gives us a designated place to go and do our daily prayers. And so I think it's been really wonderful seeing more and more of this in our architecture. And I think that generally these spaces can benefit the larger community as a whole, not just the Muslim community, because, you know, it's very rare that we think about how do we design places for pause in our architecture. And, you know, meditation spaces lead to reduced job stress, increased performance, and increased mood and morale. If this is the case for workplaces, of course, it's the case for schools and any other public space. So it really would be a benefit to our society to provide more spaces for pause. And then, sorry. Also in Islam, to design for the soul is to study God and to embody his characteristics and his creation through architecture. And so one of the many ways that this is done in Islamic architecture is through biophilia. Biophilia has been a really big topic of discussion in architecture nowadays. This is one example of how it's been done in Islamic architecture. This is the Muqarnas vault, also known as the honeycomb vault, which was inspired by the structure of the Bee's honeycomb. And then, of course, something that many people know Islamic architecture for is these beautiful tessellated patterns, which really take inspiration from the fractals found in nature, such as that in flowers and many other elements around us. And these fractal patterns, while they are beautiful and they contribute to the beauty of a space, they also have their psychological impact as well. They have been proven to reduce stress by up to 60%. And so something I definitely like to think about more as a designer is how can I start to integrate more fractals and take more inspiration from nature in this way in my work. And then, because hierarchy of scale is always an important part of an architectural discussion, I'd love to talk about how Islam integrates hierarchy and scale. And so in Islam, Islamic architecture, there's this idea of unity within the multiplicity. So in a lot of Islamic spaces, you'll see the way that these fractals and these patterns are united by some sort of circular shape or a dome. And this is representative of that feeling of unity within multiplicity that many Muslims feel when we take the Shahada, or the proclamation of our belief in one God. So this is the kind of architectural representation of that. And then finally, it's really important to talk about, if talking about Islam and architecture, to talk about Islam and nature, because nature is really important to us as Muslims. We believe that we were given nature in order that we may reflect and get to know God better, and get to know all the things that are around us in nature. And therefore, it's really important that we coexist in harmony with nature, and we don't harm it in any way, and that we celebrate it in all of our work. And so that's been a really important part, to work closely with landscape architecture and integrate it as part of the architecture since early times in Islamic architecture. And I think that has a big impact on the way that I think about architecture today. And so all of that gives a view of, my religion and how that plays in architecture. And a lot of that influences the way that I think about architecture and design and the world. And so with that, I'd like to dive into my career and how I've, brought myself and my identity to my work at VMDO. So I'm really blessed to work at a firm that has a mission statement and values that I so strongly align with. VMDO believes in designing to address the need for a healthier population planet, something which, if you haven't realized from my earlier slides, I'm really passionate about health and particularly mental health. And then, of course, we believe in an emphasis on quality and enduring design that transforms a place and elevates the human experience. And so, again, very lucky to work at a place that I'm so closely aligned with, or so strongly aligned with. And then, sorry, but some of VMDO's values, which I felt very strongly since working here, is a culture of learning. As a young designer coming out of architecture school, I've definitely felt this in the way that everyone's been so helpful in mentoring and teaching me since day one. Community and connection. So although we're a pretty large office, I feel like I know all of these people very well, and everyone's always so kind and welcoming. And then, of course, sense of place in both our architecture and in the way that we foster a community of diversity. VMDO really values sense of place, and to me, that's really important because, again, that storytelling of people and place is a really big part of what I aspire to do as a designer. And so this is a picture of me from my second day of work at VMDO last year, where my boss, Ken Thacker, who had to step out a little ago, he took me to a site with Christina Filipini, who's here, to see the Crozet Elementary School site, one of our nearby sites. And I did not expect this at all, but it was a really huge learning experience for me to be able to sit in on OAC meeting and to be able to experience a site visit and walk around and kind of just quietly observe everything that was going on. And so that really speaks to VMDO's values of teaching. And since day one, I've been very heavily involved in this project, the Chatham Hall Athletic Health and Wellness Center. So at the start of design, this was a pretty tight project team. I worked with Ken Thacker, who I just mentioned, and Christina Filipini, and then Sean Mulligan as project manager. And under this team, I was able to learn so much. And while they were wonderful mentors to me, I also feel like they gave me the power to take a lot of responsibility over the drawing set and figuring out what a drawing set really meant and looked like from start to finish coming straight out of school. And so it's really been a huge learning experience for me. And this project really means a lot to me because it's about a holistic approach to health and wellness. So oftentimes when you think of health and wellness, you kind of might separate the physical aspects, like going to the gym, from the mental aspects, such as going to see a counselor. But this building is supposed to destigmatize that and bring all those things together under one roof. So this is Chatham Hall's campus. It's a very historic campus and has many beautiful landscape elements, which we work really carefully to preserve and protect. And Chatham is one of our oldest clients. All of the yellow dots on the screen represent buildings that VMDO has either worked on or touched in some way, renovated or worked on. And then the red shows the existing, no longer existing, because it's been demolished, gym, which we are now working on replacing with this new health and wellness center. And so, like I mentioned, they have a very beautiful campus, and nature was a really important part of this project, bringing the outdoor spaces in and providing many different outdoor spaces where people could enjoy the campus and just relax. And so working with our landscape architects, Wolf Josie, from the beginning was a really, really important part of this project. And then as you move into the building, on this floor, this is the first floor plan, the left side is north. And in this building, it was really important to them to integrate a lot of gathering spaces. It's a really busy campus, and it's a boarding school, so the girls live and work all day on this campus. And so providing spaces for pause and gathering was really important. And so that's the blue that you'll see in the center, which really ties everything together. And then on one side, on the left side, you have the gym space to support Chatham's athletic facilities. And then on the other side, you have some supporting athletic spaces such as a fitness room, multi-purpose room, locker rooms, and some service spaces. And then on the second floor, as you can see, that gathering moves up and continues as the core of the building. And then on the left side of it, there's the track, second floor track, which looks down into the gym. And then on the other side, you can see some of the more mind-body spaces to support health and wellness, such as dance, yoga, counselors' offices, and then the healthcare center, including the exam rooms and sleeping rooms and other spaces like that. So here are a few of our vendors. This is the healthcare center, which again includes various different doctor's offices and counseling spaces. And including views out to nature was, again, a really important part of this, not just in the porch and the outdoor spaces we designed, but also in all of our indoor spaces. And then the gym, which allows you many different opportunities to take care of your body and the more athletic aspect of health and wellness. And then again, of course, those views out to nature were continued through the building with a corner window that we provided here, allowing an additional space for pause. And then finally, one of the many outdoor spaces that are a part of this project is this yoga porch, which allows you to have a fluid relationship between the inside space and the outside space, and to really experience that nature as part of the building. And so this is where the project is at now. It's under construction. It's still, coming out of the ground. But, going back to day one where I was on site, it was such a humbling and eye-opening experience last month to be able to go to the site of the project that I've been working on for all this time, and to realize how much I've learned since then and how much I still have left to learn. And so, again, really grateful to VMDO for how much they've taught me and are continuing to teach me. And this project has been a wonderful experience, which really allowed me to explore some of my interests in mental and physical health. And I'd love to see on the next project, when I come in on an earlier design phase, how I can maybe integrate more of the things that I've been studying and learning about my identity and background. And then, of course, with VMDO being a teaching firm, I have to give thanks for their support in me joining the ELA, or Emerging Leaders of Architecture, class of 2023, a part of AIA Virginia, which is a group of around 16 different young professionals from around the state that come together for various leadership trainings and activities, as well as we work throughout the year to design a project for a certain city each year. And this year, it's actually based in Charlottesville, Virginia. And so I'm really honored to be the local representative for our class. So in this project, we've been working really closely with Albemarle County to study resilience and what that means for our community. And so because of climate change, we are inevitably going to have all these risks and hazards that we have to be prepared for, such as extreme heat, drought, wildfire, flooding, and pests and diseases. And this will impact our community in many different ways. And so it's important that we are prepared for it. So in this project, we were tasked with designing a resilience hub to address some of those needs. And this resilience hub is meant to support a community in being prepared for climate change on 3 different levels. So every day giving, different types of education and preparedness trainings in disaster mode. So if a natural disaster hits a city, how do you respond? And then, of course, in recovery, so that if something happens in our community comes back stronger than it was before. And in particular, we've been looking at 2 different sites to locate these resilience hubs. So one is the Boys and Girls Club up there, which is in a much more urban part of Charlottesville. And then there is the Yancey Community Center, which is in the Esmond area, which is a lot more rural. And so these 2 hub areas were very different in that the Boys and Girls Club has many resources surrounding it because it's an urban area, while the Yancey Community Center has many strong resources within it and a very strong community that keeps those resources alive. And so in this project, since it was 2 very different groups, it was really important for us to get to know these groups and understand them. And so we had many different ways of engaging the community. My favorite was these disaster scenario resilience card game cards we came up with. And in this, we asked community members many different questions about how they would prepare for different scenarios. And with that, we were able to gauge what their resources are, how prepared they are, and where the gaps might be that we could fill. And it's fun. So here's a picture of us playing this game with some people. We went to the Charlottesville Soul Festival, which was a really fun way to get to know the community more and engage in this way. And then we also have survey boxes out at both of these locations. And then we're continuing to work on community engagement and continuing to attend more of these events. So it's still work in progress. But we have developed this overall sort of toolkit Excel sheet, which allows you to bring all these different solutions and services into different categories. And then based on the results that we gather from our community engagement, select a customized approach to resilience hubs that might fit for each of these 2 communities. And so again, we're still working on collecting this data and we have more community engagement to do. But once we complete that, we have this in order to narrow down those needs into these categories and then figure out how to turn that into an architectural approach to resilience in these 2 locations. And so, like I said, this is still a work in progress, but we will be presenting at AI Virginia's ArcX on November 2nd. So I hope you all will join the ELA class there to see the final results. So looking ahead, I've spoken a lot about how what I've been doing up to this point. And I think something that's really been important to me is how do I bring my identity more into the profession and understand it more, learn about it more. And so I've actually been working with a wonderful group of people to start this group called ESMA, the American Society for Muslims in Architecture. Some of them are here today, so thank you for coming. And this group essentially the mission is to establish a community for Muslims in architecture in order to unite, empower, and advocate for ourselves in the profession. And this has many different parts. And so the first part of this essentially is knowledge and growth, to gather a community. And then there are so many things that I've learned about some of which I've talked about today, about architecture, Islamic architecture in particular, which we don't really get to learn in school because, we have a very Western pedagogy and way of learning architecture. And so how can we learn about our identity and history in architecture as Muslims? And then through that, the goal would be to empower ourselves and to be able to advocate for Muslims, both in architectural spaces, how you design for the the Muslim user in architecture, and then also advocating for Muslims in the workspace. And then finally, once we have an established community, we would love to engage in different types of outreach and service and partner up with different organizations in order to give back to the larger architectural community and to be a part of that larger conversation. And so we had our first event earlier in August, and it was a really great opportunity, really great event in order to like see, just being in a room with 12 or so different Muslims in architecture was a really empowering experience. Although that may sound like a small group, it's not something that I am used to seeing other people that have the same worldview and lifestyle and religion as me. And so it was really exciting and empowering. And then in that event, we had many conversations about what we would want to get out of a group like this and how we can use it to learn more, empower ourselves, and again, give back to the larger community. And so if you're interested, we have an Instagram. If you'd like to learn more about this organization and see our progress as we move forward, this is our Instagram. So I think the message that I would like to leave you all here with today is to really just embrace your entire self. I think this is something I've struggled with throughout my life. There were always parts of me I may have cast aside, left at home, or hidden in the public sphere in order to fit into wherever I was, work or school. And I think that embracing my entire self is a journey that I'm still on, but something that has been really empowering and exciting for me. And something that I've realized is that by embracing your differences and the things that make you unique, you bring more to your work and you bring a different perspective and you bring compassion and empathy. And so I would just love to leave you all with that note. And also thank you to all the great organizations that have helped teach me and shape me to who I have become today. And again, big thanks to VMDO for everything they've done for me thus far, and to AISBV and NOMA for putting on this event. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions? Anyone in the, oh, we see clapping. Anyone have any questions there? If anyone. So if there are no questions, can we celebrate in the way you celebrate?
Yeah.
Can we enjoy the?
Of course. If anyone comes up with any questions later, this is my contact information and my Instagram. It's very painful where that came from. So while this may be the hour of happy hour, we as Muslims don't typically engage. We do not engage with alcohol in any way. We don't drink or consume it. However, we love to celebrate with food and fun non-alcoholic drinks. And so we have plenty of that here today, and I'd love to invite you all to celebrate with me. Thank you.
Oh, there is. Is there? Where was that?
Sorry, guys. Oh, yes. Not mine.
So maybe the aerials?
There
There we go. Okay.
you go.
Lovely.
Anyone's interested? Well, thank you. Please do. Treat yourself. You guys have waited a long time.
You can share with us what the snacks that you brought.
Sure, yeah. Full disclosure, there is no Egyptian food in Charlottesville. And I've been preparing this, so I should make this. We catered some different appetizers from Otto's Turkish restaurant. So many of our foods are similar or the same as Turkish food. We have falafel, pita bread, dolma, which we call mahshi or grape leaves. And then hummus. We have a lot of fun drinks. We have mango juice and guava juice that is Mira brand. I did not invent the brand, but it's delicious. And then we have a homemade hibiscus tea or perkade as we call it. And then water, if anyone's just thirsty. And then here we have our tea table where we have some tea and desserts. Sorry. Huh?
How did you get it?
I made it.
Oh, wow.
That I didn't make. This morning.